So I had a sneaking suspicion that, and I think I said so earlier when I first started covering the allegations against Vince, that more of these stories would start to, you know how it works when, once one person steps forward, then, other people start stepping forward. And today, Vice dropped an article and it's super dark. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure how far down this rabbit hole I want to go. I suppose I'll continue to cover them until I stop and say, this is enough. I don't want to, talk about this anymore. But it came up today, and I think we're going to see more of these as time goes by. So let's just get right into it. This basically says, despite denials, WWE management, new wrestler had been raped on military base. And it says the late wrestler, this is from today, it's from Tim Marchman at Vice.com. And I'm going to put a link to the article in the description so you can read it for yourself. The late wrestler Ashley Masaro said WWE management was aware and covered up her claim to have been raped in Kuwait. And if you remember correctly, WWE used to go over to the Middle East to perform for the U.S. troops. WWE denied it. Now a former top executive says he knew. So Vince McMahon stands accused of covering up the alleged rape of a WWE wrestler who later died by apparent suicide. This is very dark stuff. At a military base in Kuwait, and of sexually harassing her, according to legal documents and people who knew her. John Laurinaitis, a former WWE executive and McMahon's co-defendant in an explosive in the lawsuit, is also implicated. Oh boy. His lawyer objected to the use of the term cover-up, but confirmed that he knew about the rape allegations and said, quote, most upper-level management did, contradicting WWE's claim that executives were never made aware of them. So in a sworn affidavit her lawyer released in 2019, so this is 5 years ago, or somewhere in that ballpark, after her death, former wrestler Ashley Masaro said that she was injected with a paralyzing drug and raped by someone representing himself, as a U.S. Army doctor while on tour with WWE in Kuwait in 2006. Masaro said that top executives at the company, including McMahon and Laurinaitis, told her not to talk about the incident and agreed to not talk about it themselves, in part to preserve the company's relationship with the military. Jesus. So, I mean, if these allegations are true, Vince, and maybe we shouldn't be surprised, but I mean, you hear the stories and, it sort of rolls off, but when you start to look at these individual stories, they're awful. And if this is true, it's obvious that systemically Vince was running a cesspool. Quote, he told me not to let one bad experience ruin the good work they were doing, end quote, Masaro said of McMahon in the affidavit. Vice News can report for the first time that the Naval Criminal Intelligence Service opened an investigation into Masaro's allegations in June 2019. That investigation was closed in January 2020, according to an NCIS spokesperson. Further information, they said, could not be immediately released as it would need to be obtained under the Freedom of Information Act. So that's interesting. They're not, the military is not, the NCIS isn't talking. In the years since the affidavit was released, new information has come to light to corroborate some of Masaro's claims and cast doubt on WWE's subsequent denial, even before the statement from Laurinaitis' lawyer. Paul London, a former WWE wrestler who dated Masaro when they were both with the company, has also since said that Masaro was herself a victim of McMahon's sexual misconduct. So it keeps spreading or finding new basements. The allegations appear in a new light following the filing of a civil lawsuit accusing McMahon and Laurinaitis of raping a WWE employee and McMahon of covering it up by strong-arming her into signing a non-disclosure agreement. Both have denied allegations. I was saying this to someone earlier Vince is. I think Vince is done. This is it. He's being federally investigated for sex trafficking, and I hate to sound. And again, you're innocent until proven guilty. But now all these, these other stories are starting to come forward, and I'm starting to wonder if Vince is even like literally going to survive this. If you were to tell me that, suddenly he had just passed because he is 78. I wouldn't be surprised. And I don't wish that. I'm not saying that. I'm not wishing harm on anyone. I'm just giving my opinion, on these things, and everybody's got an opinion. But yeah, this is dark, dark stuff. I'm not surprised by any of it. London said of the recent claims against McMahon on a podcast released last week. He compared WWE to NXVIM, the cult led by now convicted sex trafficker Keith Raniere. And then there's some contact information. It says, are you a current or former female WWE wrestler with a story to tell or wondering if there's a point to speaking out? Contact reporters covering sex trafficking at tim.marchman@vice and anna.merlan@vice.com. For extra security, download the Signal app to a non-work device and text us there at 267-713-9832, confidentiality assured. And I will post this link to this article in the description again. Any allegations that Mr. Laurinaitis helped to cover up alleged rape allegation is an outright lie, wrote Laurinaitis' lawyer, Edward Brennan, in response to questions about Masaro's allegations. Quote, Johnny, like most upper-level management, at some time became aware of the allegations and ensured all proper WWE protocols were followed, including privacy for the alleged victim. We object to the use of the term cover-up, as no such plan or plot ever took place to hide or assist in the alleged rape, end quote. A spokesperson for TKO, WWE's parent company, declined to comment, and a lawyer said to represent McMahon did not respond to requests for comment. Neither McMahon nor Laurinaitis is now associated with WWE, with McMahon resigning as chairman of TKO the day after the sex trafficking suit was filed. Jesus, this is just going to murder people who just thought, like me, who thought I'm going to buy into a company that's going to grow. And wow. And I had said earlier, do you think that we're going to be talking about this in another 6 months? I'm starting to think that in 6 months we might be. They might not get past this so quickly. This might not. I don't think this is going to go away quietly. Let's keep going. Masaro's road to WWE stardom was far from traditional, and she said in her affidavit, rife with mistreatment from the start. In 2005, she was cast in the Diva Search, a reality competition of sorts that aired as part of the company's flagship Raw program. As the winner, Masaro received a WWE contract and, despite being, she would later say, completely untrained, immediately joined Raw as a wrestler. While wrestling has predetermined outcomes, working with another wrestler to safely execute even basic maneuvers requires intense training. Over the next 3 years, she performed as a wrestler and valet, a woman who accompanies a male wrestler to the ring, and represented the WWE brand as a Survivor contest and Playboy model before being released in 2008. And there's a video here if you want to watch the finale of the Diva Search where she actually wins. And, as much as I enjoyed the whole valet diva kind of thing, reading this kind of thing, and of course, you don't understand, and it seems to be in good fun, this sort of thing. You read about these sorts of things, and it makes you look at it a lot differently. In hindsight, you're like, yikes, this is bad. In 2016, Masaro joined a lawsuit brought by a number of former wrestlers against McMahon and WWE seeking damages related to the effects of traumatic brain injuries they said they suffered while wrestling. Yeah, that's no surprise, and probably common, especially in the older days. According to a filing in that suit, Masaro said she had been sexually assaulted in Kuwait and that Ferdinand Rios, a WWE doctor, had reported the incident to, quote, WWE executives who soon thereafter met with Masaro to apologize for their negligence, but persuaded her that it would be best not to report it to appropriate authorities, end quote. If this is true, that's awful. Just pieces of shit. Holy shit. Okay, let's just keep going. In a filing the next month, WWE called the claim a, quote, stale and baseless allegation, end quote, and denied Masaro had ever reported a sexual assault to anyone affiliated with WWE, saying she had been heard telling others that the doctor, quote, had done an inappropriate pelvic exam, end quote. Holy shit. This is the second time I've read this article, but I mean, it's just, as headlines at the time about Dr. Larry Nassar molesting hundreds of girls and women under the guise of medical treatment would have made clear, this can itself be a form of sexual assault. A judge dismissed the case, in 2018, after which plaintiff's lawyer Konstantin Kryos, whom the judge had sanctioned and ordered to pay WWE's fees, filed the first in its ongoing series of appeals. Asked for comment, Kryos provided a link, and the link it will be here in the article, because I'll put the article link itself in the description again, showing he had petitioned the Supreme Court to hear an appeal. It has previously declined to do so and noted that Masaro's affidavit was made under oath to a federal judge. The matter sat there until May 2019 when Masaro died. While authorities declined to publicly state the cause of death, it was reported, and her survivors have not disputed, that it was by suicide. Subsequently, Kryos published in full the sworn affidavit Masaro had signed in November 2017, in which she detailed the allegations about her rape and WWE's response. It can be read in full here, and there will be the link there in the article to that. There are a lot of links inside this specific article, depending on how deep you want to go down the rabbit hole. Wow. I mean, this starts out 2 weeks ago or so with, the big deal with Netflix and, The Rock moving into, the board is TKO, and then the allegations drop. And then CM Punk gets hurt, and then, The Rock moves into WrestleMania. And then, the stories with Ava. This is not, Ava, his daughter, receiving death threats. And now this is not, this is a hellish transition. From the McMahon era into what I think it's a good thing that it's all coming to light, and these are allegations again, innocent until proven guilty, but that these claims are being aired out and given the light of day. So as the old saying goes, daylight being the best disinfectant. But man, this is not a smooth transition. Not a smooth transition. This is horrific. Here we go. In the affidavit, Masaro describes events that she says took place on a 2006 WWE tour. The year is incorrectly given as 2007 in the document of U.S. military facilities in Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait, on which she and several other performers and staffers took part. None could be reached for comment. That's convenient. Suffering from dehydration, the statement says she was taken to a military base where she was given an IV and left alone. After a couple of hours, a man representing himself as an army doctor and a woman in fatigue, she said, appeared, administered another IV, and took her to another room. Masaro, according to a source with knowledge, was taken to Ali Al Salam Air Base in Kuwait, where the clinic would have been staffed by Navy rather than Army personnel. This would explain why NCIS handled the case, even though Masaro said the rapist purported to be an Army doctor. Quote, the woman guarded the door. The statement says, while the man proceeded to inject me with a drug that caused me to be unable to move my body or scream. The man then proceeded to violently rape and sodomize me. I was completely helpless to defend myself against this attack, as the drug he injected rendered me temporarily paralyzed. Despite being unable to control my movements, I remained fully conscious for every second of the attack. God almighty. Eventually, the statement says a WWE staffer began banging on the door. The man and the woman covered her with a quilt and left the room, and the staffer carried her away and brought her back to her hotel room. The sequence of events given in the statement, including Masaro falling ill, going for medical attention, and then being brought back to the hotel, is broadly consistent with the one described in a 2006 blog post published on WWE's website by Jimmy Hart, one of the performers on the tour. Masaro, the statement says, was not in position to have a rape kit taken and did not report the incident to authorities. She told fellow performers about what had happened, but told them not to report it to anyone. After she returned to the U.S., though, Ferdinand Rios, the WWE doctor, questioned her about the incident. She agreed to tell him what had happened as long as he didn't tell anyone else. Subsequently, though, the statement says he informed McMahon, and she was summoned to a meeting with McMahon, Laurinaitis, WWE production chief Kevin Dunn, and other men she didn't recognize but believed to be company executives or lawyers. So, I mean, you can see that this is being handled badly. I mean, I know nothing about handling these sorts of things, but you would think the last thing an alleged victim would want is to be surrounded by men in that sort of situation. They're just handled very poorly. Dunn, who left WWE last month after more than 40 years of serving as one of McMahon's loyal right-hand men. I can't help but wonder what TKO must be thinking right now. They must be pulling their hair out. This is like the end of that show, The Shield, where Mackie, gets the job, but he discloses everything for immunity, and they realize exactly who it is they've brought on board. Holy shit. Could not be reached for comment. A spokesperson for TKO did not provide contact information for a representative for Dunn when asked. I can't believe this. Netflix also must be like, what the hell is going on? And, it's a long time between now and January 2025, but who knows how long this is going to go on. And will there be others? Because I get the feeling there will be. Vince, the statement reads, led the meeting with these men and asked me to recount what happened in Kuwait. Then he said it was not in the best interest of the WWE for me to make the information about my attack public. I was still completely traumatized at that point, and I just agreed. It was clear that there had already been a conversation and that they had reached a decision on their own prior to consulting with me, as this was not a debate, but rather Vince instructing me to keep this confidential. Lord have mercy. Vince did at least apologize for what I went through, but then stressed that if I disclosed this incident, it would ruin the relationship between the WWE and the U.S. military. That's bullshit. Wow. If that's true, that is complete bullshit. But then again, NCIS isn't really disclosing any names either, so they're not exactly being forthcoming. Maybe Vice will get that Freedom of Information Act and see what NCIS discovered. He told me not to let one bad experience ruin the good work they were doing. Holy, boy, oh boy, oh boy. In a statement issued after the publication of the affidavit, WWE denied its claims. At no time, quote, at no time was Vince McMahon or the management of WWE ever informed by Ashley Masaro or anybody else that she had been sexually assaulted, drugged, raped, or sodomized by a military doctor with a nurse standing guard while on a goodwill tour in 2007 to U.S. military bases in Kuwait, read the statement. It's a hell of a story if she's spinning one, and I mean, she's committed suicide. So, I mean, if this is a work of fiction, it's a hell of a story. And there's still more. At no time was there ever a meeting with Vince McMahon, Kevin Dunn, John Laurinaitis, or that guy's name, I just get sick of saying it, or other company executives in which she told them of such a claim and was instructed to keep it quiet. According to what Laurinaitis says, which is corroborated by an interview given last fall by Rios, the doctor, that statement was not true. The TKO spokesperson declined to comment on whether WWE stands by its denial. Yeah, because the good old boy network has sort of ended here, and holy shit, TKO must be like shitting in their pants. They just like must be ready to strangle Vince. A paradox of pro wrestling is that for all the secrecy surrounding its inner workings, there is a remarkable amount of media in which insiders freely discuss them. An entire ecosystem of podcasts and streams where current and former performers discuss how things actually work, what people are really like behind the scenes, and what they saw during their careers. As part of that ecosystem, Masaro's story has been kept alive in the years since her death by wrestling fans and media, and also by people who knew her. Yeah, this is like, this whole thing could be an entire season of Dark Side of the Ring. By the time this ends, and wherever it ends, I have no idea how this is going to end. This is completely different from the debacle, or, if it is a debacle surrounding the WrestleMania thing. This is something completely different. So I have no idea how. I don't even know how we're going. I don't know what the road to WrestleMania is going to include. Tomorrow is the presser for WrestleMania 40, and I'll be covering that on this channel. But I have no idea how any of this is going to go forward. No clue. And wow, are there going to be more of these things? Oh boy. All right, let's keep going. One of these podcasts, Cafe de Rene, hosted by former WWE wrestler Rene Dupree. On one of these podcasts, Paul London discussed Masaro last year. London and Masaro were linked together both off and on screen in her time with WWE, as the two dated, and she also, served as his valet. At the time the podcast was recorded, McMahon had recently returned to WWE after resigning in the wake of Wall Street Journal reporting about secret non-disclosure agreements he'd signed and allegations of sexual misconduct and abuse against him. Jesus. Yeah. Quote, I do remember specifically many times when she would be crying to me because Vince was propositioning her to fly on the jet with them, end quote, he said. Quote, Kevin Dunn, Bucktooth Bucky, would be telling her that she has to fly on the jet with them, or every now and then she was they would always put the divas up at the TV hotel or whatever. McMahon would be knocking on her door and trying to get her to answer. I'm shocked this Vince stuff is just now coming out. Yeah, that was something I was going to get at. I don't know. Like they said, with all these podcasts now, wrestlers, and for many reasons, I've said that these podcasts are a good thing because there are so many different stories, from behind the curtain, inside the ring that, we're not aware of, relationships, matches, personalities, whatever, from all these former wrestlers. I'm glad these stories are getting told. At the same time, things like this usually don't get talked about too much, even within those or the media that I've seen about these sorts of things. It doesn't get covered very much. I think we may see a shift in that, because now it's, sort of the top story in WWE. This is probably going to outshine, whatever they've got planned in their creative. But maybe we're going to see that shift. So they start talking about more and more of these things. And when I switch on my TV and when I switch over to YouTube, I'm starting to see more and more wrestlers discuss it. Some seem to be staying away from it. They're only sticking with the creative aspects of what WWE is doing: Raw, SmackDown, Rollins, Cody Rhodes, Reigns, The Rock, that sort of thing. But I'm starting to see people like Jim Cornette talk about it today. And a lot of other wrestlers talk about it. And they seem to be quite candid in their disgust about everything. And, it makes you wonder, did they always know about these sorts of things? So, yeah, I'll probably never know. London described WWE as, quote, an onion of destitution, Jesus, end quote, in another interview on the same podcast just over a week ago. And the link will be there for that interview. It's a really disgusting onion full of just layers and layers and layers. As you say, what's known in the wrestling business is believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. So there's always that weighing on one thing. But of course, I'm going to believe my girlfriend at the time, especially when I can see her physically shaken and disturbed. She was a good actress, but she wasn't that good an actress. A representative for London did not respond to an email. A TKO spokesperson specifically declined to comment on London's implications that McMahon had harassed or coerced Masaro. I'm thinking TKO was probably cooperating, as much as they can with the federal authorities, and they probably want to, let as much daylight in it. I can't imagine that there's another play to make. Huddling and circling the wagons isn't going to work here to some extent. I mean, you're just not going to be releasing press statements every other day. But I imagine they're probably just cooperating with the investigation and holding on to the seat of their pants and just hoping that this, wow. Kairos, Masaro's lawyer, suggested that her career ended at least in part because she rejected McMahon's advances on the Banfield podcast this week. Last September, Audible released a podcast called Ashley versus WWE. There's a link to that here, in which people who knew Masaro offered new corroboration of claims she'd made in the affidavit. Some of this was less specific, such as her cousin saying she'd intimated that someone had attempted to rape her, her best friend saying Masaro had told her that a doctor did something to her and that it was swept under the rug, and an unnamed source saying Masaro had told them that she'd been sexually assaulted and urged by WWE to keep it quiet. More specific new information reported by the podcast, though, contradicts WWE's past denials. That's a shock. Reporter Isabel Thompson talked to London, who described Masaro feeling trapped, frightened, and preyed upon when McMahon and Dunn would pressure her to fly on the company jet or when McMahon would come knocking on her hotel door at night. He said that she had told him she was raped after returning to Kuwait, and that she had met with WWE executives who told her not to say anything about it. Thompson also reached Ferdinand Rios, the WWE doctor whom Masaro had told about the rape and whom she said reported it to McMahon, according to the affidavit. Rios, who did not return a message left with his office, confirmed to Thompson that while the details are a bit unclear in his memory due to the passage of time, he does remember that Masaro told him about the rape after returning to the U.S. from Kuwait. Quote, I spoke with her and she told me a little bit about it, he said. He further said that it was fairly widely known within WWE at the time. Quote, those that went would tell those that didn't go that this happened, end quote, he said. While he said he does believe Masaro's story, his recollection differs from what's recounted in the affidavit in one key particular. While she stated that he told McMahon about the incident, he remembers that it was common knowledge and a subject of gossip, and that he approached Laurinaitis about it only to find he was already aware. And thank God this is coming to an end. He already knew, and no one wanted to give me any further details about it, said Rios. I had nothing to do with it, they said, so it was just sort of a shock, when you're restricted from saying anything else. At some point, Johnny heard about the allegations in general, i.e. that Ms. Masaro claimed she had been assaulted in Kuwait, wrote Brennan, Laurinaitis' lawyer, in an email as to when McMahon found out about the allegation. Johnny has no idea as to when or whether, end quote. She was extremely special, London said of Masaro, speaking of her to Thompson. I felt extremely fortunate to be in her life and to have her in my life. That is some ugly business. Speechless. And I think everything that I've said that I need to say has already been said as I was reading it. That's a lengthy article. I'm going to put again the link in the description. But I'm starting to believe that more and more of these cases are going to start to come forward because people are. I think one of the things that are bringing people forward now is that there's no longer any fear of retribution or that sort of backlash that would have happened 5, 10, 15 years ago. And I think that's what's going to cause a lot more people to come forward with these ugly stories. I don't know how far I want to go down this rabbit hole. But yeah, another story, another tough day for the WWE. But I got to say, if these allegations are true, then it's deserved, or at least for the participants. I feel bad for people who just come in and try to do their job and aren't a part of any of this. And I've said this from the beginning, just have this fucking albatross tied around their neck. I guess more will be revealed in time. That's my video. Like the video if you'd be so kind. Leave a comment. What do you think? What damage is this going to do to WWE? Is it going to do any damage? I mean, they've got multi-billion-dollar deals with Netflix. I don't know if that can be, pulled away. They're going all over the world, with these global partners. What's the downside to WWE? Or is it just the downside to Vince and these particular people? Maybe that's the best way to handle it. What's the best way to handle it for you? Subscribe to the channel. I'll be here covering tomorrow with the presser with Triple H. I don't think he's going to have anything to say about this, but I'll be here just the same, and I'll see you in that video. All right, take care.